Yes, so do you remember we talked about these so-called hindrances, these things that tend to come up and present and get in the way of our meditation? And you probably also remember me saying that meditation is our natural state, that's our kind of natural way of being, it's just our kind of upbringing and culture and society and habits has kind of cluttered all that up. So all we're doing when we do a meditation practice is we're exercising those muscles to kind of recapture that is natural to us. However, what is also natural to us are these kind of habitual states of mind which kind of come in, and we've all spoken about them in different ways, and there are certain categories of habitual states of mind which come up, which can sort of present when we meditate. So let's just visit them and talk about how we can meet them when they do come up. And they're referred to the hindrances. You've got them in handout. So the hindrances are, the first one is called, traditionally, is called desire for sense experience, which basically means, oh, when's dinner? I'm a bit cold. You're sitting down to meditate, but you're kind of in a state of kind of wanting something, desire for sense experience. Now the clever thing is also that our mind is treated as a sense as well, is counted as a sense. So even the desire to plan, and this is I think the one that most of us experience, we want to plan, we want to think, we want to sort out, we want to manage, we want to, and it's essentially the mind is a sense, and so we're craving thinking, basically, we're craving conceptual kind of activity. So I think that's a common one for many of us, is craving, desire for thinking, desire for that. So that's a common one. The next common one, maybe not for everybody, but some people, is called ill will or irritation. So it's when we just feel a bit edgy, a bit frustrated, a bit irritated, we start trying to sort of wriggling, they're making a noise, or the seagulls, or whatever. It can be quite mild like that, or it can be that you're in a rage about something, for good reason perhaps. But so basically, when we sit down to meditate, that's what floods through us, and we become aware that that's what we're feeling. So that's ill will. So you can see that one's a sort of grabby, cravey, greedy one, and one's a sort of push it away one. So they're kind of related, those two. The next one is called restlessness and anxiety, which is just when we feel a bit fidgety, physically restless, and maybe we're feeling a bit stirred up, a bit churned up, and mind's busy. Obviously that's related to the desire for sense experience one. And we just tend to fret and worry, and so that's another one. The fourth one is called doubt and indecision. So that's where you're not really deciding properly which meditation practice you're doing, or when you're doing it, or how long you're doing it for. And you just keep yourself vague, so you never really get to engage properly because you're in that state of vagueness. But the doubt and indecision can also be, I don't know if meditation works, I don't know if I'm any good at meditation, I don't know if I like that meditation group. It's any sort of questions or doubts that kind of prevents you from engaging with the practice. And then the last one is beautifully called sloth and torpor. So sloth and torpor is, sloth I think means physical kind of tiredness and kind of lethargy. And torpor is that sort of, or it might be the other way around, I can't remember which is the body and which is the mind. The other one is the mind, when the mind just feels sort of tired and empty. So they are the five, I'm sure we can all recognise all of these. In more tantric practices, a tantric practice, you might have heard the word tantra, it relates to a kind of Buddhism or a kind of spirituality which is very much to do with energy, working with the energy. And in tantric practice, which I always quite liked within Buddhism, because I studied all kinds of Buddhism, but I was very drawn to the kind of more tantric, shamanic type parts of Buddhism. There's always the idea that there's no such thing as bad energy. There's no such thing as even the darkness has a purpose, and everything can be transformed. So all these hindrances, they all have positive counterparts. So, the positive counterpart of wanting to think is that you've probably got a really sharp intelligence. The positive counterpart of doubt and indecision is that you've probably, you've got a good inquiring mind. There's always some quality in there. So the thing is to enjoy these qualities and use them, have them when you want them, and use them for the best rather than for having them kind of mastering you. So there are some antidotes to these hindrances. If they come up, there are some things that we can do. The baseline one you're all doing anyway, which is just you kind of notice what's going on. You apply a little bit of. Oh, that's interesting. So you notice what's going on. So you might just be sitting there and you notice that your mind is racing, or you're doubting what you're doing, or you haven't been clear in deciding what you're doing. And you simply acknowledge and accept that that's what's happened. And just in the kind of acceptance of that, you get a little bit of relief, you get a little bit of positivity. So you accept what you're doing, and then you just rededicate yourself to what you'd rather do instead. So that is the bottom line. It's so simple. It's a bit like when we're doing the breathing. Mind goes off and we just bring the mind back as soon as we notice. So really that is the golden rule. It's an antidote to any of those hindrances, is that we notice and we lovingly acknowledge, and then we bring ourselves back to purpose, get ourselves back on purpose. And that is part of the practice. That's what we're doing. The other thing we can do is we can develop what's called a sky-like attitude. And that's a bit similar, really. We kind of notice what's going on in our minds or in our emotions, and then we just treat these things as clouds passing through a blue sky. So we don't get into them, we don't kind of get lost in them, we just kind of realise they're happening, but there's a bigger part of us which is actually a blue sky. We're not a cloud. We're not a cloud of hatred, we're not a cloud of doubt, we're actually a blue sky, and these things are just scudding across. And it's a poetic way of describing, again, probably what you're already doing. Sky-like attitude. So we adopt a sky-like attitude, and that can help. Especially when your minds are busy, we've got lots of thoughts. Just, relax. We can cultivate the opposite. Well, we're already cultivating the opposite by doing the mindfulness practice. Because that is an absolute antidote to restless mind, or stress. So by sitting down and doing a meditation practice, we're actually cultivating the opposite, or going for a walk, or going for a bike ride, or having a mindful bike ride. All of those things are cultivating the opposite. They're helping us build our meditation capacity and our natural time of being mindful. Or with the loving kindness meditation, obviously we're definitely cultivating the opposite if we're a bit susceptible to frustration or criticism or ill will, because that's absolutely and utterly counteracts that. It just replaces that with loving kindness, like we've been discussing. Another way we can do it is separate from meditation. We can consider the consequences. So this is a reflective thing we can do. We can consider what's the consequences of being anxious all the time? What's the consequences of being irritable and snappy? We just literally give ourselves a reality check and realise if we're like that, actually it's not going to be great. So that gives a bit of incentive to get back to the meditation. So that's simply considering the consequences. The next thing we can do is called suppression, which I think is a bit of a big word, but it's part of the traditional Buddhist list of what you do with meditation. And that's just, if you've just got so much rubbish going on, right, you just sort of say, oh, for heaven's sake, will you just get over there for a few minutes? well, I do my meditation. And I think it's important to realise that we're not doing denial, we're not doing repression here, we're not doing, you know, alienation from how we're really feeling. We're just saying, I know that's how I'm feeling, but you know what? I really want to cultivate this, and so I'm just going to put you over there right now. And it's kind of linked to your more kind of New Age law of attraction type practices, where you might notice you've got something going on that you don't like in your life, and it's tempting to get indulgy and sort of, you know, kind of almost make it worse. But actually it's much more positive to just lovingly acknowledge that that's how you are, or that's how things are, or that's how you're feeling, and say deliberately, okay, I put that to myself, and I put my attention on what I do want, which is something we'll come on to in the next meditation we're about to do. So it's called suppression, but I would just say it's more like paying attention to what's positive and deliberately deciding not to energise what's not positive, even if it's temporarily. And that will just build momentum. So that's that one. And the last one is called surrender. Now, this is good when maybe you're meditating and maybe there's something really quite huge going on for you emotionally, and you know, you can't do the sky-like attitude, you can't cultivate the opposite, you can't consider the consequences, you can't suppress it, it just all feels too overwhelming. And you know, it's absolutely fine to kind of bring that into your meditation as well. What it means, I'm calling it surrender. In Buddhism it's called going for refuge, which means sort of like prostrating yourself at the Buddha's feet and going, help! Because you can't do anything about it. But I'm calling it surrender because it's that, it kind of is just a kind of really soulful acknowledgement of what is. And it's very, very loving just to say, I'm in a state, I don't know what to do about it. I just kind of mentally prostrate myself at the feet of anybody who can help me, anybody who can love me, anybody who can support me. And that's what surrender means. And you know, believe me, there are times like that when it happens, and I find at times like that something magical starts to happen. Just that sort of decision to kind of lay it all out. You know, you can't work it out for yourself, you can't sort yourself out on this occasion, and you just lay it all out, and you kind of, it's almost like a prayer, you kind of pray for, I don't know who to, or maybe you do know who to, you know, you might have a sense of who you're praying to, or it might just be a sort of sending out an intention into the world that you would like to receive help. Okay, so I thought I'd just scoot through those for you since we didn't manage to do it last time. Yeah, any questions about that?
What about when sleep or sleepiness is a hindrance? Because I do notice the sort of numbing dog thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know that's not on your list, although that can affect your mindfulness.
It's kind of sloth and torpor that would come into, tiredness comes into that. And we talked about that, I think, on the first week a little bit. Sometimes when you start to meditate, what happens is you start to stop and recognise how tense and tired you actually are. So sometimes, basically, you just need to kind of rearrange, you know, get a bit more sleep, get a bit more balance into your life. There's an interesting thing in Buddhism again, which is there's sort of three layers. There's ethics, which is your way of life, whether you're kind of in alignment with the kind of laws of the universe. And then based on that balance with the laws of the natural laws of the universe, that creates the conditions to allow meditation to go on top of that. So you've got ethics at the bottom, meditation is supported by that. And then as you meditate, you hit wisdom, which is on top of the, so they're all kind of related to each other and dependent on each other. So sometimes if we come in at the meditation level, we might discover we're out of balance with something on the kind of ethics level. And you know, in Buddhism, ethics is, it's not a judgmental sort of ethics. It's not, you're not pleasing anybody or being good, or there's no commandments or anything like that. It's just about cooperating with the natural laws of the universe. And if you do cooperate with them, you actually have a happier, more fulfilled life. So to get back to the tiredness again, I think that's what can happen. We just realise we're out of, we're tired. I've also said it's okay to be sleepy in meditation, especially with guided meditation. It can still go in subliminally. And I think there's another thing that can happen sometime with meditation. I noticed this, if I go on an intensive meditation retreat, I'm sure Colette would know this as well, you can go through a sort of layer, you can hit a kind of wall of resistance. So you're kind of going deep, you're relaxing, things are nice, you're on retreat, it's all great. And then suddenly on day 3 or something, and oh my god, you just keep falling asleep, and it's like, it's like you don't want to experience something. Usually what it is there's something within you that's rising up for kind of love and attention, and there's a wee bit of, I don't know if I'm ready. So all I would say is just be a bit aware if there's something like that, if there's something that if it feels like a kind of emotional resistance, see if you can warmly, kindly open yourself up to investigating what that is. That's what I do. If I think that's what's going on, I just kind of say, I wonder if there's something underneath that. And sometimes it's like loads of tears about something, or anger about something, or just something that wants to come to the surface, but there's an initial bit of resistance. So sometimes tiredness can be that as well. And sometimes it's about what time you meditate, picking a time when you feel the most refreshed, ideally, obviously. For some people it's great to meditate after they've been physically active. For some people that's too tiring, it's better to do it before. So yeah. Okay. Is that helpful, talking about all that stuff?
Yeah.
I kind of noticed last time I kind of almost didn't want to talk about it, because it's so. But Angie?
One thing also which I always realize is that I sometimes, when I have a certain kind of plan, like with this now, it was like, we have, I know you call it now, not homework, but
home practice.
Home practice, okay. Anyway, the sort of negative image that everybody has with this kind of thing, or most people have anyway. And like people would say, oh yeah, I know, like I don't know, was it you said that we had 2 weeks, and or somebody said, I can't remember, we have 2 weeks, so I don't have to do it now. It's almost like it's not for yourself but for this.
Yes.
There's all this stuff from school times, and it's just really different. This is not about this. It's not about being on time with something. It's about yourself, isn't it? And yeah, I can only say myself, like in the beginning when I started meditating, like a few times, and I always felt like, oh, that's not really me, and I couldn't always do that like all the time. And now I really need it. If I don't do it, I wouldn't feel okay. And sometimes I don't do it, and I really don't feel okay. It's like that. It's just, it's not surprising with this whole way how we live in the society. This all the time in the cars and the traffic and the people and the shops and money stuff and pressure of having to pay your rent and your kids and I don't know what stuff. How can we be possibly in that space where we will be, and to have a possibility to actually connect with that is just great. So the whole thing about the guilt, I think, can also sometimes, because I know when I feel like, oh, I should have done it and I didn't do it, and then I start feeling guilty, and it's just rubbish because it just stops you. There's no point. Who am I feeling guilty towards? It's yourself who does it. So you might as well just say, okay, I didn't do it, but I'm going to do it now. As you said, make peace with it, and then make a new plan again. Yeah.
And I think, remember I mentioned this thing about willfulness and laziness. I think they're both kind of related, because I think the over pushing comes, because we don't really trust ourselves, but also the under pushing comes because we don't really trust ourselves. They're both kind of, and this is related to the thing we're going to be doing after tea break, the new meditation that we'll be doing, because it's about setting intentions and setting up things that you want to have in your life. But I'll say a bit more about that after tea break. But yes, so the balance is to get into that sort of kind of adult space with it, really. You know, kind of, you know, you feel free and you're doing it for yourself and you're enjoying it. Yeah, but not to lose the kind of clarity of intention that you want to do it.